Mitchell, a three is good. Plus the foul. A chance for four. Only three to shoot. Gonna have to make something happen. Clark through the lane, reverses it in. Post feed. Boston. Oh, beats the clock. Wow. Indiana will reset. Clark fire away. You bet.
Hello, Fever fans, and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show. We've got a huge episode for you coming out today. In this episode, we're going to be talking about that statement win for the Indiana Fever, who knocked off the previously undefeated New York Liberty on Saturday afternoon in Gainbridge Fieldhouse, just hours after the Pacers dropped a tough Game 4 in the NBA Finals. It was the Fever who picked up the energy in Indianapolis and delivered a signature win in front of the home crowd. It may have just been a regular season game in June, but it definitely had that playoff atmosphere. Caitlin Clark returned to the lineup and made her presence felt in a big way, and Sophie Cunningham brought the spark back to the bench that we've been waiting for. This wasn't just any win. It was a victory over the defending WNBA champions and the undefeated New York Liberty, and the Fever have shown why they're ready to compete against the league's best. Plus, we're going to be looking ahead to the next game as the Fever get ready to take on the Connecticut Sun on Tuesday in another key matchup. The Fever currently sit atop the Eastern Conference standings in the Commissioner's Cup, and if they win Tuesday and the Atlanta Dream drop one of their next two games, the Indiana Fever will be heading to the Commissioner Cup's final, which will be on Tuesday, July 1st, and all that and more right here on the Pacers Fever Show. Welcome back into this episode. Welcome back into the show. If you are new to this podcast, we are anywhere that you can find audio versions of the podcast, but we are also over on YouTube if you did find this on your podcast feed and you're interested in the video format of the pod. So we are at the Pacers Fever Show on socials, over on YouTube as well. You can email us if you have any comments, questions, or if you are interested in joining the show. I'm always looking, again, for co-hosts to join in on the fun as we talk Fever and Indiana Pacers. It's been quite a busy time for me as the Pacers continue to play. I am recording this on June 15th, and Game 5 of the NBA Finals is on Monday. I cover both the Indiana Pacers and the Indiana Fever. So it's been a really hectic May and June for me as both teams are playing simultaneously, which we typically don't have too much of, at least to this extent. But I'm really excited that both teams are playing some really great basketball right now. I know that the vibes might be a little bit low based on what happened over the weekend as far as the Pacers are concerned, but the Fever pick us up off the mat like they often do and perform in a way that was, I think, surprising to some, but maybe not so surprising to us that have been watching this team internally without Caitlin Clark and with Caitlin Clark. So we're going to talk about game number 10, which was on Saturday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse against the New York Liberty. But before we do that, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends. Helps people find the show. It helps us build this community. It's a great community so far, but I'm really to build out some of the Fever fandom. And hopefully, if you're interested in joining the show as a guest or even as a co-host, I'm still looking for a co-host. So definitely shoot me a message on X or over on our Facebook page. You can also shoot me an email at thepacerfevershow@gmail.com, and we can talk about you joining as a guest or as a co-host. And I'm always interested to see some fans come out and really support not only the show, but jump on the show and give their 2 cents on what this Fever team is doing. If you want to join for the Pacers side of the podcast, still looking for a co-host there as well. But if you want to cover both, I am more than happy to have you on for both and join me in talking about these two teams. An exciting time in the Indianapolis area, and this weekend was no exception to just how much fun this has been to have the Fever and the Pacers being as relevant as they are. Caitlin Clark, almost I guess you consider the face of this league. The Indiana Pacers just 2 wins away from their first NBA title, and a lot of excitement on that side as well. So looking forward to covering both of them as the season continues, as the postseason continues, and into their off seasons, we will cover them as well. But I want to talk Fever today. We're going to jump into game 10. But before we do that, we're going to talk about a couple things that happened before the game. Ari McDonald was released. She was on that emergency hardship contract. And once the two players returned, in Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark, because the roster is back up to a complete roster in the form of terms in which the WNBA deems you completely fit for your roster to not have that emergency hardship contract, they had to terminate it. And Aerie McDonald will be a free agent, and any team can sign her. So will be interesting to see who picks her up, because she was quite a spark off of the bench, and as she played a lot of minutes in this starting rotation and kept the Fever in a lot of these games and won the Fever a couple of these games. So I best of luck to Aerie McDonald. I don't know if the Fever really have the means right now to re-sign her, and I think it's kind of unfortunate just because of how good she has been. Obviously, things can happen. Fever could make some moves to bring her back in, but I just don't see at this current stage Aerie McDonald seeing the floor for the Fever anytime soon. So other teams will be looking at her, I'm sure. She is a very good basketball player. It's kind of surprising that she's been out there as a free agent for this long, and looks like she could provide quite a spark for any of the contending teams that might have some room on their rosters, or if there's an injured player that she can step in for. I'm sure that the league will be looking at her and trying to bring in a very good, talented young basketball player. Caitlin and Sophie return off of their injuries. Sophie Cunningham was dealing with that ankle injury. Caitlin Clark, of course, with the quad injury, had been going through some light practice. And the last episode, actually, that I previewed the New York Liberty game, I actually said that there was probably no chance that these two played. And it sounded like that, the way that Stephanie White was talking about these two players and their ramp up back to game action. But both of them return on Saturday. It was announced on Friday, I believe, that both of them would be available for the game. Caitlin Clark started this game and I think played over 30 minutes. So she was on a little bit of a restriction, I think, but not much. And so she steps right back into her starting role, and they needed her. They needed Sophie Cunningham for this game because, like I said in the last episode, without those two, I just felt like it was at least a 10-point win for the Liberty, just because of how well they had been playing. They had not lost a game this season. They were the reigning champs, and I just believed that they were a more talented team, even though they were missing some of their key pieces as well, which we'll discuss later on in this episode. Tawana Bonner out for personal reasons, so she is not with the team currently, and that was a major piece off the bench that they were missing. So it was good that Sophie was able to step back in, because had the three of them been out, it would have got some real slim pickings there, and I'm not sure how that game would have gone with the absence of those three. But because the other two came back and played really well in this game, gave the Fever a shot to do what they did on Saturday. Quick overview of the opponent. Again, like I said, the Liberty came into this game 9-0. They had not lost a Commissioner's Cup game. They were 3-0 heading into this one. And if they would have beaten the Fever, I think would have all but solidified their spot at the top of the standings. So it'll be interesting to see what the Dream do, because now the Dream have a good chance, because they do play the Liberty coming up this week, in which they can move into second place or first place, depending on how the Fever do in their game against the Connecticut Sun. So we will discuss all things Commissioner's Cup, because there are some scenarios that we can break down, and I can give you the roadmap for the Fever clinching their spot in that Commissioner's Cup final. And I think that's really instrumental in building this team's confidence to have a chance to collect some hardware for the first time since Caitlin arrived. And I think that that is going to be key. So we will discuss what that all means and break it down coming up later on in the episode. Game summary: the Indiana Fever, like I said, win this one 102-88. A huge victory for the Indiana Fever. Coming into this game, Tawana Bonner, the only one missing for the Fever. Liberty were without Leonie Phoebish and John Kell Jones. So two of their starting pieces that are normally in their lineup and key contributors to this team. I felt like the Fever really had the advantage since John Kell Jones was out, because John Kell Jones was tremendous in their last game when they played them at Gainbridge a couple of weeks ago. That was the game that Caitlin Clark injured the quad. She ended up playing the whole game, but it was announced after that she would miss at least 2 weeks with that quad strain. And to bounce back like she did, to play the minutes that she did, just speaks to how tough Caitlin Clark is. And it really speaks to how much this team really missed her, just because the offense looked completely different in this game on Saturday, and they scored quite a bit. We'll get into that as the episode goes on as well. But overall, the starting lineups were both very good starting lineups still, even with the players missing for the Liberty. So the Fever went with Sydney I got that wrong. The Fever went with Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, Natasha Howard, and Aaliyah Boston. I had the notes up from last game. Liberty, Brianna Stewart, Kennedy Burke, Sabali, Natasha Cloud, and Sabrina Ionescu. So the Liberty go with Burke in place of a hurt John Kell Jones, and then Sabali was in as well for Phoebish. So we had a new look starting lineup for the New York Liberty, and was different than when we had faced them back on, I think it was May. When was this last game? I'm trying to find it real quick on my schedule there. Back when they played them on May 24th. So it's been a little bit since the Fever and Liberty have squared off, but it was back in Gainbridge. They did not have to go over to the East Coast for this one, but they played in front of the home crowd. And I think the energy and just the want and the desire to get Caitlin back, and it paid off with a packed house on a Saturday afternoon. Sellout crowd watching Caitlin Clark take on the best team in the WNBA. And she came out in this game as if she had not been hurt at all. It was quite something to watch. You know, you come back from injury, right? And you've not been in high intensity, high level practices. She's been going through just some very basic court work and some warm ups, some shots and different things like that. But she wasn't going through and practicing at the intensity that I think you would normally see, at least when the media was available. She was not out there really going through intensive work to try to get back from this injury, and neither was Sophie Cunningham. And they both came out and looked like, I mean, there were moments where she looked gassed as far as just fatigue, but I think it was, it was a little bit more than what was going to be normal for Caitlin in this game, just because, she hadn't run around like this for 2 weeks, especially against a defense like the Liberty can put out there at times. But Caitlin came out, and it looked like she'd been playing the last 2 weeks, because she had a span where she knocked down 3 threes in a row in 38 seconds. They asked her after the game how many consecutive 3-pointers she ever made in a game. She said she didn't know how many it was consecutively, but she does remember that she hit 12 3-pointers in a high school game in Des Moines back when she played as a young kid. So it was a lot of fun to watch this game, because Caitlin brings an intensity, brings a focus back to this team, and really is the engine that makes this offense go. I mean, I think there's times where, just as, it's so weird how similar the Pacers / Fever are when you're talking about both of them. I think it's actually pretty wild, just the similarities between the two teams of wanting to play with pace, high IQs, playing basketball the right way in which they're moving the basketball, getting everybody involved in the offense. And I think the one difference is that you have a superstar scorer in Caitlin Clark, where the Pacers don't really have the person that's going to light you up for 30 points every night, where Caitlin could. She's much more aggressive at shooting the basketball than Halliburton is. But I think the way in which they pressure you full court, the way they defend and get better defensively as the games go, the young core that they have surrounded by good veterans, and those veterans being of size, it's a fascinating comparison. I mean, you got the whole Lexi Hull energy, rebounding, hit threes, same kind of thing with Aaron Nesmith. Kelsey Mitchell, good defensively, can get into your grill, cause you problems as you're trying to score, kind of like an Andrew Nemhard. Obviously, Kelsey's a much better shooter. You've got Caitlin and Tyrese, the engines that make this team go, and their passing abilities, both of them, are just, I was talking to my dad before I was recording this podcast. It is Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to all those out there that are celebrating a Father's Day. I was talking to him, and he was saying the same thing. It's so funny because it's, I don't think they did it on purpose. I mean, maybe it is, some of it's intentional, but like they've built these two teams to be very similar in the way that they operate. I mean, you've got a really good backup point guard coming off the bench in Sydney Colson. You got Sophie Cunningham, who's kind of like that Ben Mathurin, where very intense, can put the ball in the hoop, but can also provide you some good on-ball defense. I think Sophie's more gifted, obviously, defensively than Ben, but it's just it's eerily similar to what they do as far as just the way that they've built these two teams. And they do have the same ownership group. They have Kelly, who's worked with the Pacers as well and has a good relationship with KP and Chad Buchanan on the other side because she's worked in that organization. But these two it seems like they've compared notes. Carlisle and Stephanie White talk about often that they are in communication during games and after, sorry, not during games, but after games, and shooting text to each other while they're watching each other's teams. And so a collaborative group, this Pacers, I think they call it the Pacer Sports and Entertainment Group, that owns them. But it's the Simons and just everything that the Simons have built as far as front office staff. The ability to build a team like this, I think we're spoiled. We, obviously it's really hard to get the first round pick, and it takes a lot of work to do that. And you have to get lucky with the way that the draft goes in the lottery. But the fact that the Fever landed Caitlin Clark and then the Pacers traded for Tyrese, I think you've built around two very good young point guards who are good humans who love the city. Caitlin was actually talking about the Pacers when they were interviewing her. It was really interesting because right between game 3 and game 4 of the NBA Finals, there was a day, I think it was Friday. I want to say, Thursday. I believe it was Thursday or Friday. The Fever, the Thunder, and the Pacers were all in the facility. So they said that Pacers media and Thunder media and NBA media, national media, were obviously doing their finals media stuff with the Pacers. And then after that made their way over because the Fever's practice was then open to the media after that. So you had some of the NBA people going over to the WNBA people, talking to Caitlin, talking to Stephanie White about the Pacers. The national media got to discuss with them what it means to have both of them franchise players. And Caitlin said that both of them really enjoy being in Indianapolis. They don't want to go anywhere else. They've talked about this where they want to be in Indianapolis forever, and they want to build something here because they know how special both of each other are. And I think there's a mutual respect there. There's a lot of comparing notes. They're texting quite often. They're always together. I think that they've built quite a good relationship. And because they're so similar where they come from, growing up in the Midwest, growing up in small towns where Indianapolis is a bigger town than where they both come from. So, they've never been up into the hype of the LA or the New York or Miami. Both of them have said that they want to be in Indianapolis forever. And when you have a player like this, I mean, that's 12 to 15 years where you're going to be competitive with these two. I mean, you're going to be very competitive and oftentimes title contenders because of how special these two players are. And the high character in which they've built this team. And I know this is a little bit off topic. We've gone down a rabbit hole here, but I felt like it was just so important to talk about just because of what it's meant for Indianapolis to have two great franchises like this. And again, I think it all goes to the way that their front offices have built this team out. And I think as time goes on, as their careers go on, these two are going to do some really special things for this city. So kudos to both of them, and kudos to the Pacers/Fever, because what we're watching right now is a lot of fun. Now, getting back to this game, again, Caitlin Clark, 3-3-pointers in a 38-second span. That felt like where the game was really starting to turn. I feel like when she hits those threes, you can see the momentum build. You can see the Fever start to understand that they're going to be able to compete with this defense who's been so very good throughout the regular season so far. and has been really the difference. I mean, obviously their offense is really good too, but this is a New York Liberty team that come in heads and shoulders above what the other teams are as far as the defensive rating is concerned. So looking at the stats, this is actually really interesting. The New York Liberty are first in their defensive rating at 91.3, which is phenomenal. I mean, that is a lockdown, smack you in the face defense where it's very difficult to score on them, where you shouldn't be able to score 102 points against this team. Like, this team does not give up a lot of points. They are good on the defensive side of things. They rebound the basketball pretty well. And it's just a cohesive unit. Like I said, cohesion, I think, is so big. I think that's something that's becoming more, which is really interesting to me, that both sides of it, WNBA and NBA, they've kind of strayed away from this cohesion and the ability to have all five guys play well together, plus 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or women play together. And I think there's definitely an emphasis now where these teams are starting to build themselves with depth and people that like one another, that fit together seamlessly in their styles of play, much more like college. Like, college basketball is about five guys. It's not about your superstar. It's about building the team, moving the basketball, rebounding and defending as a cohesive unit. And because you've got the continuity back from last year or the year before in college, they're trying to build that same thing now in the WNBA and NBA. And you've seen that with the Liberty. So the Liberty are just going out and adding different pieces to add into their mix, like a Natasha Cloud. But they're very intentional about the specific player and the play style in which she has to add her into the team. And I think the Liberty have done this very well, and they're 9 to 10 people deep when healthy. So the rest of the league has taken that into consideration when also creating their teams. I actually think the WNBA is much better at this than the NBA, because in the WNBA, there's been more focus on building a team and a core unit rather than trying to build around just one or two superstars. And I think the WNBA has had much more success in doing so, because I feel like the NBA, there's definitely an ego problem that they have with some of their superstars. And so it's harder to build around them, because that's just the way the NBA has been built for the last decade and a half, has been built around a big two or a big three. Whereas the WNBA, because of the contracts, because of the youth, because of the growth of the league, I think it's been more difficult to do this in the WNBA. So they've had to rely on building really good teams around their one or two superstars. And I think that's been the biggest difference. Obviously, contract and money has a lot to do with it too. But again, I've really enjoyed covering and watching the WNBA this year, because the talent and the growth of talent is tremendous. I think there are really good resources out there now, and really good things happening in women's sports and women's programs, because let's just be honest, it's always been a male-dominated thing, sports, unfortunately. I think that there needs to be, obviously, a push towards women, but in doing that, you've got to invest money into women's programs, women's sports, youth. There is not a heavy focus on investing in youth women's sports, and I think that is changing day by day. Obviously, we're not to the point we need to be at yet, but I think it's happening, and you're starting to see that product change the way that women's sports are viewed in the United States. And I've always felt like they've been viewed very well over in Europe. I mean, the women's teams over there are supported just as the men's teams are, but I think you're starting to see this growth, this evolution, which is definitely needed in this world where equality is what we strive for in every day of life. And I think we're getting to that point. But that being said, this game, it just speaks to I think the talent level, the growth of this Indiana Fever team. I think that even if you look back 2 weeks ago when they faced the Liberty last, you've seen quite a bit change for this team internally, getting more comfortable with Stephanie White at the helm and what that offense is looking like. But their defense has been so good, this Fever team. 96.2 on the defensive rating. They are second in the league, not right behind, but behind the New York Liberty. The New York Liberty are almost 5 points better on the defensive rating scale. But that just, I mean, again, that goes to show you just how good the Liberty are and how impressive this win is for the Fever, especially the points that they dropped on the Liberty. Now, I know they were missing two of their better defenders anyway, but again, I think you take that, you take the advantages where you can find them. And we didn't have the DeWanna Bonner, and you had Caitlin Clark, who's just getting back or trying to get back to full strength. But you also have some players that are needing to grow, and there's still a lot of learning. Whereas with the Liberty, this is a pretty polished team, and obviously the injuries are going to hurt them. But up and down their roster, they've got people that can fill in next woman up, and they do that. I mean, they've always been really good about stepping into different roles and starring in their roles, and that's what you've seen with the Liberty so far. But again, I just wanted to mention the defensive rating, because that defense for the Fever, when they get into it, when they start to focus, when they bring the intensity that they need to bring, they are a good collective defense. I feel like they do give teams issues on that side of the ball. I think it all comes down to the focus and intensity as far as following the game plan, but also, matching that physicality. And I think with a younger team like the Fever, I think it's more difficult to go up against a reigning champion, a team that's built full of veterans that have been in this league, that understand how to compete and win titles in this league and play the best talent too. And the Fever were up for the challenge in this game. And the last two times they've now played the Liberty, they've held huge leads. Like, they've gotten really far away from this team at times. I mean, I think there was a 14 to 15 point advantage for the Fever at one point in this game. There was an advantage in the last game. They were up 80 to 68, I believe, in the fourth quarter with 9 minutes left. So there has been a team that has, this has been a team that has been very good against the reigning champions. And I think that it's important to realize that, they were there before with this team. They competed with them the last time they played them. I think their youth and I think just a lack of focus is what caused them to drop that last game. This game, totally different. They step on the gas and they don't let up off the gas and end up closing out a very talented New York Liberty team. And I'm interested to see as time goes on, as the season wears on, when the Fever do have another chance to take a swipe at the Liberty. Of course, you want them back at full strength, because I feel like it would be a tremendous test for this Fever team to go up against them. And the best part about it is next month they have that opportunity to do it. They'll go out to New York to play them. They play them the 16th and the 22nd out there. So they will travel to play this team twice back to back. And I feel like it's going to feel very much like a playoff series would, right? You're going to get to play two teams on their home floor. And a month down the road, those players back healthy. Hope everyone's healthy. And then you get to see what this test might bring. But, the Fever are going to have other tests before that. I just feel like this is the team you always want to play, the Lynx, teams that are at the top of the league. You want to see what you do up against them. And I feel like the Fever in a lot of these big games have shown that they can compete with the league's best. So I think that's why a lot of people are excited. A lot of people are high on the Fever's chances this season just because of their ability to go up against teams like this. They now have the depth and the veteran leadership around them to compete against these teams. And as Caitlin Clark plays games, the more and more she plays, the more that she's now second favorite in odds to win league MVP behind Nafisa Collier from the Lynx. So it will be a lot of fun as the year goes on, just because I think Caitlin's going to continue to step up and star as this team's point guard, but also one of the best people, one of the best women in this league. Caitlin had a spectacular return to the Fever after missing 5 games with that left quad injury, scored 32 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds, and accounting for 54 of Indiana's points through scoring or her assist. So over half of their points came off of contributions by Caitlin Clark, and that just speaks to the importance of CC to this team. I mean, you look at her last game against the Liberty, while she was struggling to shoot the basketball, she had some really big shots, had some big moments. she had a hard time hanging on to the basketball last game against this Liberty team. And she was a little bit better in this game. She only had 7 turnovers compared to her 10. Obviously, you'd like to see that number still come down from where it is. But I think with this defense and with how aggressive she plays offensively, I think that's another thing too that that'll be a lot of there'll be a lot of discussion around her turnover numbers. But I think what you also have to realize is some of these players are still trying to learn how she operates. I mean, and to be honest with you, there's not really anybody in this league that can pass like Caitlin does. She takes a lot of high risk, and this is something that a lot of young point guards struggle with is that risk versus reward, and then also the speed of play can be hard to get adjusted to in just a year. Like it takes a couple of years to get adjusted to the speed of a professional basketball league. And so I think she will continue to get better, but I think she will still be somebody that turns the ball over quite a bit just because she does throw some passes that are, and it's like a 50-50 on reward versus risk. I mean, she had a couple of passes. I think the first one that I noticed in this one that was just, you're like, oh, she's back. I think it was Aaliyah Boston. Caitlin's like almost at the 3-point line or just below the 3-point line on their side of the floor after a defensive rebound. And Aaliyah Boston got loose and she drops an absolute dime about 3 feet away, maybe 4 feet away from the basket. And Boston catches it as she's on the move and just lays it in. And I mean, there's not many people in NBA, WNBA, college. Like, there's not a lot of people that can throw passes like. I mean, you're talking about like Tom Brady might be the only person that could ever throw a pass like that, and he's a football player. There is just not many people that can throw an accurate, almost full court pass like Caitlin does. It's just sometimes you're like, wow, like that is the vision and the awareness, and then also the ability to track how far you're going to throw that and at what speed and what arc to get it up over the defender that was chasing Aaliyah Boston. It was, I mean, it wasn't luck. And she threw a couple passes like that. There was one, again, I think it was Boston, and this is kind of risk reward thing, right? She throws one. It looked like it came out of her left hand. Like it was to the point where like the pass came out from the left side of her body, and it looked like she'd pushed it with her left. And it was an absolute bullet to Aaliyah Boston under the basket, where there might have been, I don't know, 10 inches of space. And it went right into Aaliyah's hands. And I think there was even a point where Aaliyah was like, what? How did that here? How is that here? She ends up missing the layup because I think it was such a perfect pass that it was like, how did that get through here? And Aaliyah kind of took Aaliyah back, like, whoa. And then she kind of got stuck up underneath the rim, and that's harder to get back as the defender's behind you anyway. She ends up missing the layup, but it was, again, a really great pass. But then there's other ones where she throws that similar kind of thing, and the speed on it is just too much. The player is just not in that position to catch the basketball, and it goes out of bounds. It just, some of those things are going to happen with Caitlin. I think you take that and you run with it, just because the amount of times where it works out, I mean, it's about a 50-50. So, you lose some, you win some with her as far as passing the basketball, and she's going to get better and better. But I mean, if she can start to limit herself to 3 or 4 turnovers a game, I think that's the more comfortable spot that you'd like to be in with some of the risky pass that she makes. But again, like I said, there's 8 to 10 points that you get per game where you just completely change momentum because of how well she passes the basketball. There's not many people like that can change momentum because of her passing ability. She's one of them. So it is a lot of fun just to watch. Clark's presence was felt because on Tuesday, the Fever had dropped a game 77-58 against the Atlanta Dream, their season low in points. So you go from the lowest of low to the highest of highs, because Saturday was their season high. The victory over the Liberty with 102 on the scoreboard is something you will take every single time that you're out there. If you can score 102 points on this defense, that is quite a feat. And they did it. Caitlin Clark had 25 points at halftime. That was after that stretch of 3-pointers that she just went total nuclear on. She hit the first, a 33-footer with 1:26 left in the quarter. She nailed a 27-footer 21 seconds later. And then came a 31-foot 20 seconds after that one 3-pointer. So they were not just 3-pointers back to back. They were logo shots and they were contested. They were coming off screens. She was running off of screens and hitting these. One, I think it was the last one. They were even like, oh no, she's shooting it. I'm going to get up on her. They contested it really well. And she still jumped above and buried it. Like they're jump shots that she's shooting. She's not flat footed shooting these things. She is reaching her apex and drilling it. Like, I mean, nothing but net. I don't think any of them hit the rim. So it was quite the shooting display, and the momentum that gave the Fever heading into halftime. I think that ultimately was the difference. I mean, they outscore the Liberty by 5 points in that second quarter, and then they carry that onto the third and outscore the Liberty by 6 in the third. That stretch is ultimately what sinks the Liberty in this game, and then closed out the fourth quarter really well, defended really well. They held the Liberty to 17 points in the fourth quarter. That is eerily similar to a game that happened 12 or 13 hours before that, where a team that we favored scored below 20 points in a fourth quarter. But when you have those 3 quarters that the Fever did, the second through the fourth, that's a hard team to beat. The way that they played, the way that they attacked the paint, when they got into the paint, they were kicking the ball out. There was one really great like hockey assist. Caitlin Clark hits Aaliyah Boston running down the lane. Boston then turns because she drew the attention of 2 defenders because they were trying to help. There was help coverage coming. She turned and fired it. I think it was to Lexi or Kelsey, and one of them was standing in the corner. Could have been Sophie, actually. But whoever it was standing in the corner wide open, had just buried it, because it was the speed in which they started to pass the ball around the arc was just beautiful to watch. It was beautiful basketball. When the Fever are playing well, that basketball is zipping around the 3-point line, or the pick and rolls are crisp, where they're a lot of Kelsey, Caitlin, Aaliyah. I guess you could say Lexi Hull too, because Lexi, she sets quite a lot of picks too. But that ball is just moving, and you love to see that. And that's when the Fever are most effective, when they can get everybody involved, moving the basketball. Even Caitlin off of those picks, when she's hitting those threes, it's just a high pace in which they want to play. It's early in the clock when she's hitting those. And I'd love to find some stats. I'm going to have to look deeper for a couple episodes and see if I can find a similar stat to the one that they use in the NBA. There's one in the NBA that they use that is percentage, or shot percentage, the earlier on in the clock. Obviously, earlier on the clock, they usually have a higher shooting percentage anyway. But the Pacers, for instance, the first 8 seconds of clock, they're like a 70% true shooting percentage. I would say that the Fever are pretty up there too. Like, I would say that their true shooting percentage in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock is tremendous compared to that middle, 8 seconds. But I mean, I'm talking like drastically difference probably for the Fever too, because it feels like when Caitlin hits those threes, they're very early on in the shot clock. They're right off that first action, that first pick and roll. She just buries it. So I need to find that stat and see if there's something similar to what that looks like. But yeah, just looking at the box score in this game, you can tell the Fever had it all. They had everybody going. They got everybody involved. I think that it was one of their better games as far as just scoring was concerned. Natasha Howard, 14 minutes. Now, that's one thing that my dad and I actually talked about this too, where we were talking about her minutes seemed to have decreased more and more as time has gone on. And she's had some really good games in the season. I know that she's more a veteran, has more experience. So it might just be the ebbs and flow of the season, and Natasha will be fine. I mean, she's a really good basketball player, but she's had 4 points in 14 minutes. She didn't play a whole lot in this game. Aaliyah Boston, 10 points, 11 boards. She had a double-double. She was really good in the paint as far as getting the rebounds, because Breanna Stewart is a very big body that's going to rebound pretty well, but Sabally to John Kell Jones, when she's in there, they rebound it pretty well. But she Breanna Stewart had 5 rebounds. Sabally had 9. Natasha Cloud 6. So they got some good production as far as the guards are concerned from the rebounding standpoint. But I felt like the Fever were much better and much more focused on the glass. They actually win the rebounding battle by 4, and that's difficult to do for the Fever because they're not necessarily the best rebounding basketball team. I actually think that that's one of their weaknesses is when they get into a rebounding battle with teams that they lose it by quite a bit. And I just don't feel like they do a great job at rebounding the basketball. They ranked 8th in the WNBA. There's my cat. She just jumped up in the podcast. But they rank 8th in rebounding in the league, whereas the Liberty are just a tick better at 6th. But again, the Fever have lost many games not being able to match that same intensity on the boards and in the paint, which the Fever still got outscored in the paint on Saturday. The Liberty had 44 points in the paint. Fever had 36. So not a drastic difference where, I mean, it's not uncommon to see the Fever get beat by 12 to 20 points in the paint at times this season. But I did feel like the Fever were able to get good opportunities as the game went on inside the paint. I think a lot of that has to do with the shooting ability of Caitlin Clark. And when Caitlin's going, Kelsey Mitchell was shooting the basketball well. Lexi Hull was hitting threes. Sydney Colson was hitting threes. It stretches out that defense. And I think when you're able to run up and down the floor like they do, and that's the other thing too. I think same thing with the Pacers. The Fever sacrifice size with the ability to run the floor, and it shows. But if you can keep those rebounding battles to 4 or 5 rebound difference, I think that's big. And they out-rebounded the Liberty in this game, which is a huge win for a team that's really known for their rebounding. And same thing with the points in the paint. I think there's some times where they're going to struggle against teams with size, but if you can keep it close and hit your 3-pointers, hit your mid-range, I think that's where you can catch up. And that's what the Fever did really well in this game, because another thing to know, the Liberty actually set a record for the number of threes hit in a game this season in the WNBA. So they are a good 3-point shooting team. There's something that you have to worry about there's somebody that you have to worry about from the 3-point line. They shoot the most threes in the league at 30.9, just a 0.2 difference between them and Golden State. Their 3-point percentage is a 35.6. So just a slight tick below the Fever. But I mean, again, if you're looking at 3-pointers attempted, the Liberty shoots 7 more on average a game than the Fever do. And that's something that, again, usually favors a team if they're hitting high percentages of those shots. And being right at a steady pace with the Liberty on that one, I think that it was something that was a key going into this game, was how are the Fever going to shoot in this game as far as from deep, because they're going to have to keep up with the scoring from the Liberty. And the Liberty only shot 20.7% from the 3-point line tonight. I'm all backwards. My head's all messed up now because I said that. 3-point percentage, 20.7% on Saturday afternoon. They were 6 of 29 from behind the arc in that game, whereas the Fever shot 48.6%, which is a huge advantage, and they end up hitting 17 of 35. And that ultimately is the difference. They hit 8 more 3-pointers, shot 6 more than the Liberty, which is not common. But yeah, the Fever 17 to 6. That's what, 11? That's 33 points from deep, the difference. So you're going to catch up quickly on second chance points that you might have got beat on, fast break points that you got beat on, and then also points in the paint that you got beat on. The Fever match that and are able to take over the game and control the game because of their 3-point shooting and their shot efficiency. They were from the field, the Liberty shot 42.3%. The Fever were 48.1%. Fever did get 6 more shots, made 7 more shots than the Liberty. So overall, a really great shooting night, a really good defensive night, stayed really focused on the glass. Their intensity, I think, being at home, having that crowd behind you, having Caitlin back, it was all a perfect storm. against the Liberty, who were missing two of their better players, and the Fever took advantage and beat them by 14, holding them only to 88 points. And you will, again, take that every night. Sabrina led New York with 34 points, and Stewie had 24. But the excellent shooting from Caitlin Clark, who Caitlin ended up hitting 7 3-pointers. She shot 50%, so she shot 14. They also got great scoring from Kelsey Mitchell, who had 22. Lexi Hull had 14. She was 3 of 4 from deep. And Aaliyah Boston had 10. Sydney Colson, I thought, played really well with 10 points. This is something that I think came out of missed time from Caitlin. Sydney Colson, in the games that Caitlin had played earlier in the season, and I know Sydney Colson is new to the team, but she really did struggle to kind of find a groove with the starting lineup and the players that she was playing with as she rotated in. She was having, I think, a little bit more difficult ability to find the open shot, get the open shot, but also orchestrate an offense that she wasn't quite used to running yet. The difference is now she is used to it. She's played with that starting lineup. She knows what she's doing to initiate the offense. She knows who to look, where they are going to be on the floor. Yes, she is still learning that, but I think she's gotten so much better because she's gotten so much more time with the starting unit that she knows how to play with this team much better now. Obviously, you don't want to see Caitlin hurt, but I did think it helped Sydney Colson, and I think it'll help DeWanna Bonner too, because both of them had to play in different times where Sophie would have played or Caitlin would have played, and even Dantas too. I feel like she got some really good minutes in this game as well. She had 5 points, shot the ball well. I think that she adds a different element to this team when it comes to inside the paint. She rebounds the basketball. She had 3 offensive rebounds. She I think benefits from Sophie not being out there, where she's eating more of those minutes when those players are absent. So again, I think injuries always suck. Leaving the team for personal reasons was always awful. But it really has, I think, helped this team mature and grow together. And I think Caitlin sees things when she's not playing. First time she'd missed games in her very short career, but I think it helps to be able to observe from the sideline sometimes. You learn things. And talking with Sophie, she sat by Sophie and the coaching staff during that missed time where you're talking with your coaching staff on things that they're seeing, listening to it from their perspective. You get an appreciation for their perspective more, I think. And it's a great growth moment. And the Fever weren't too bad off without her. I mean, obviously they weren't a great team or really a good team, but at least they kept their heads above water and won a couple games there that were crucial. They didn't drop every single game that Caitlin was out. So again, I think that they used it as an advantage in a way to really grow this team and get those role players going and how to understand how to play with their teammates and a bunch of new faces around this team. I think it did help while it hurt. So I think that was a pretty crucial stretch because Sydney Colson was excellent in this game. I mean, that spark off the bench with 10 points. She was hitting her shots. She was 2 of 3 from 3. I mean, just nothing but net, dropped some threes. Thought she looked really good as far as getting the offense going and hitting her stride as far as getting her teammates involved. She had 6 assists. She didn't have 1 turnover. I mean, she was a maestro when she came in, and an absolute must have when you're playing against a team like this. They knocked the Liberty off for the first time this season. Liberty hadn't lost. Had some games that were close. And honestly, if you look back at it, without a bad fourth quarter in that first matchup between the Liberty and the Fever would have beaten the Liberty twice, I think. So what a stretch they have against some of the better teams in the WNBA. And there's some growing moments that they've had against other teams. I mean, if you look at Atlanta has to feel pretty good about the way they've played against the Liberty this season. Their size causes the Fever a lot of problems, and size is always going to cause them problems. And the Fever, like any young team, have a lot of good highs, but a lot of really bad lows. They've lost to this next team that we're getting ready to preview in the Connecticut Sun. So Stephanie White's old team coming back to town. They're going to play against the Fever on Tuesday night. But before we do that, we're going to take a look at the standings before we preview the game coming up. Indiana Fever Commissioner's Cup. Let's talk about it. Eastern Conference, they are 3-1 in the Commissioner's Cup. They have a point differential of 31 points. And they currently are first again in that Eastern Conference because they hold the tiebreaker over the New York Liberty. The tiebreaker in the first tiebreaker is head to head. And because the Fever have now beaten the Liberty and are 3-1, as well as the Liberty being 3-1, they hold that tiebreaker. Atlanta Dream have beaten the Sky and the Fever. They lost to the Connecticut Sun, and they are 2-1. So if they were to match the Fever's record, Atlanta will move on to the Commissioner Cup final. But they have a game coming up against the Mystics on Tuesday, I believe it is, and then the Liberty later on this week, I think Thursday. So 2 tough games for Atlanta coming up, and that will be ultimately, I think, what decides it, because if the Fever handle a team that is struggling mightily in the Connecticut Sun, even though they beat them last time in Gainbridge, Connecticut's coming into this game not playing it very well, and I think the Fever should win it. And if they do, they'll move to 4-1, and then they've got to have Atlanta drop a game between their game against the Mystics and the Liberty. So looking at the schedule, the Dream, if you're listening to this on Sunday, they're playing them at 2 p.m. Eastern time on, CBS Sports Network. There we go. At first I saw FanDuel. I'm like, wait, they're not playing FanDuel. Sorry. Atlanta Dream playing the Mystics today, Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. I'm recording this right now at 12:58. So right when I pretty much post this episode, I think it's going to be on. So you'll know the result. So if the Dream lose that game to the Mystics, all the Fever will have to do is win their game against the Sun, and it is all over. It is done. So they do not have to worry about the other teams that are behind them, but pretty big stuff that could happen. So if the Dream drop either of their games, the Fever are going, if they win against the Sun, are going to Commissioner's Cup final, which will be on Friday, July 1st, and they will play the Western Conference. So the only 3 teams, I mean, I guess the Mystics, if they won 2 straight games against the Dream and then they won against the Sky, they could move to 3-2, and it's so they would have to have a lot happen. The Liberty, yeah, they would have to have the Fever lose, they would have to have the Liberty lose, and they would have to have the Dream. Sorry. Okay, so sorry, I was trying to do the math. Washington has to win out, and then the Liberty would have to lose, and the Fever would have to lose. Because if Washington wins out, they would have beaten Atlanta. So it's a really big stretch if the Mystics win it. And I don't believe, the Sun can't win it, I don't believe, because of their matchups. Yeah. So the Sun are all but eliminated. I mean, it would take a miracle for the Sun. It'd also kind of take a miracle for the Mystics, but Mystics is much more alive than Connecticut. Western Conference, and then the Chicago Sky already out of it. Western Conference, the Minnesota Lynx are first in the Commissioner's Cup. Now, remember, they play 6 games because they have 7 teams in the Western Conference, so they play 6. Right now, they're all sitting on 5 games played. The Lynx are in first at 4-1 in the Western Conference. They only have the Aces left to play. Golden State 3-2 in second place. The Seattle Storm are 3-2. The Phoenix Mercury are 3-2. Vegas actually is the only team that has not played. Vegas, and who's the other team that hasn't played 5 games? I'm very confused. I guess, because they're odd. Never mind. It was an odd number of teams. Vegas, the only team that has not played 5 games yet. They're sitting at 2-2, so they could move up in the standings with a win over they're either playing the Lynx or Mercury. The Los Angeles Sparks are 2-3, and they're, I think, mathematically eliminated already. And Dallas, who are 0-5, are already eliminated. So it looks like, if all things go accordingly, looks like the Lynx have the upper hand here, because all they have to do is beat the Aces. If they beat the Aces, they move on. If they lose to the Aces, then it gets really interesting. Then it's a it's like a 4 or 5 team tie. And I'm not going to try to do the math right here on the show. But right now, it looks like the Lynx, if they take care of business against, if the Lynx take care of business against the Aces, then they will move on in the Commissioner's Cup. I'm trying to find when the Aces game will be against the Lynx. That will be on Tuesday. So same night the Fever play. And it's at Minnesota. I'd expect Minnesota to win that game at Minnesota. So I believe whoever comes out of the Eastern Conference is going to play the Minnesota Lynx, who are they only have one loss in the regular season against the Seattle Storm. So very good teams this year. The Lynx are 10-1. The Liberty are 9-1. So Lynx actually have an advantage because they've played one more game there. What else? Anything else? Yeah, Fever just got to win their game against Connecticut and then hope that the Atlanta Dream drop a game. So I'll be watching that game today, see what happens. All right, moving on to the Connecticut Sun game that the Fever, or actually, let's do the regular season standings and then we'll move on. I forgot. Minnesota Lynx in first place in the WNBA at 10-1, so they're number 1 seed right now. They are 5-0 at home, 5-1 on the road. So feel pretty good about them advancing in the Commissioner's Cup when they play the Aces on Tuesday. New York Liberty 9-1. Thank you to the Indiana Fever. They have knocked them down into the second spot in the WNBA. They are 5-0 at home, 4-1 on the road. Have a losing streak of 1. Atlanta Dream 7-3. They are 4-3 in the conference, 4-1 at home. I don't know why do they do conference? I don't know why they do conference record because they don't put them in conferences. Anyway, I'm not going to read the conferences. 4-1 at home, 3-2 on the road. Phoenix Mercury 7-4. They are 6-2 at home, 1-2 on the road. The Vegas Aces, they currently sit in the 5th spot. 5-4 is their win-loss record. 3-1 at home, 2-3 on the road. Seattle Storm 6-5. They are 4-2 at home and 2-3 on the road. Indiana Fever 5-5, back to 500. They are 3-3 at home, 2-2 on the road. Valkyries are 8th seed at 5-5. They are 3-2 on their home floor and 2-3 on the road. Mystics 4-6. They are 3-2 at home and 1-4 on the road. The Sparks are in the 10th spot. They are 4-8, a 1-5 record at home. That is brutal. And a 3-3 record on the road. They're better on the road. Connecticut Sun 1-3 at home. On the road, they are 1-4 for a total record of 2-7 in the 11th spot. In the 12th spot, Chicago Sky 2-7, 1-2 on their home floor, 1-5 on the road. And then the Dallas Wings 1-11, 0-5 at home. And they have one game that they've won on the road at 1-6. They've lost 7 straight. Dallas is not looking good. They look like they are destined for the number 1 pick once again. So we'll see what happens. But them and Chicago and Connecticut battling for an opportunity to get that number 1 pick. So we'll talk about that as obviously the season starts to go. But 1 win out of 12, that's not a good start. Looking at the game coming up, Connecticut Sun at Indiana, 7 p.m. Eastern time on NBA TV. So you can watch it wherever you get your NBA TV. I think YouTube TV has it if you're subscribed for free. Otherwise, I think you have to pay for it. I think it's an add-on for everybody else. But let me know in the comments. I don't know as far as Hulu or network or whatever you guys have, cable, DirecTV. There's so many weird streaming services now. Fubo. Like, does NBA TV come as a free option? Because I think I had Fubo, I believe, before, and I had to pay for NBA TV. Whereas I think NBA comes with YouTube TV subscription. But yes, looking at the game ahead, the Fever dropped their last game against the Connecticut Sun, 85-83. Caitlin Clark missed that game. It was not a good game for the Indiana Fever. They shot 49% from the field, had to feel pretty good about that. 41% from the field, from 3. Felt good about that too. But if you look at the way that Connecticut Sun played, they were hot tonight or that night. They were 51.7% from the field, 50% from three. They absolutely shot the lights out the last time they played the Fever. But that being said, it was a very close game. It was a close loss for the Fever, only a 2-point loss, which if you got a team shooting 50% from the field, 50% from three, you'd be like, all right, we'll take a 2-point loss because that means that we were hot too. But honestly, it came down to a couple of things here that we'll talk about. One, Caitlin Clark was absent from this game. Two, the Fever, it was weird. Like the Fever didn't really have that go-to scorer in this game, and I felt like there was not really anybody they were really turning to. I felt like the offense was sloppy. If you look at the turnover battle, though, I mean, they turned it over 14 times. The Sun turned it over 19 times. So it wasn't like the turnover, sorry, 16 times. Was it 16 times? Total team turnovers. It says 19. That can't be right. I'm trying to look at the box score. It's all wonky. I can't see. Like it doesn't align on the WNBA. Hold on. Yeah, 16 turnovers for the Sun. In the last game against the Fever, 14 turnovers for the Fever against the Sun. So it wasn't really the turnovers that caused the problem. It really was just a matter of they hit shots in this game. Hit 2 more than the Fever, shot only 1 more than Indiana. They did hit 3 more threes than the Fever, which you could look at that and say that was the difference, which it was. So again, I felt like even playing field, and they were without Caitlin and Sophie. It was a really murky game for the Indiana Fever. And the last time that they played the Sun, I want to say this was also the game. That was the game. Yeah, that was the game too where Sydney Colson got hurt. Okay. So they went from the Liberty to the Sun, and that's when Sophie and Colson got hurt. So it was a tough game for them because they just ran out of point guard options pretty much. And really the offense, okay, now I remember it a lot better. The offense was just not, it just was a whole lot of Kelsey Mitchell. It was a whole lot of dribbling. Lexi Hull played really well. DeWanna Bonner played really well. But again, it just felt like one of those games because they were down ball handlers. They were down the initiators, the maestros. It really came into effect. And I think it impacted everything that they were trying to do on the offensive end. If you look at the game, Marina Mabry, she was great. 26 points, was really efficient from the field, 10 of 17, 4 of 9 from three. She crushed the Fever, and so did Tina Charles. Sanaya Rivers had 12 points, and Haley Peters had a really good game as well, 9 points for the Sun. And it was just too much for Fever. They couldn't really get any defensive stops. I mean, it was just a whole lot of the Fever trying to counteract their punches, and they just could not do it without their engine. And the Fever, it felt pretty grim. I mean, you go from losing a really game that you should have won against the Liberty, then you go play the Sun, and you get this kind of result. And they had lost to the Mystics too. That's right, because it was New York Mystics and then the Sun. So that was a 3 game stretch where they were just not, I mean, you could just tell like the injuries got to them. The flow of the offense wasn't there. You had a bunch of players playing with people that you didn't really play with often. A lot of backup minutes from different people. It just was not a very clean game for the Fever. And then after that, the Fever are now, they won 3 games out of their last 4. They look a lot better on offense, obviously with Caitlin Clark back. But really, I mean, there's just a tough stretch to have a letdown against the Liberty. And then you got a bunch of players getting hurt. You got Caitlin missing the game against the Mystics. They played the Mystics pretty tightly in that game, only lose that by 6. Then they come home and just an absolute letdown. The Sun hadn't won a game. They win a game against the Fever. And I mean, honestly, you're going to probably look back at that point in the season and say that was the low point. That was the turning point in the game. In the season, where you look back at it and go, Caitlin wasn't playing, lost 3 in a row. But after that, we rattle off a ton of wins, made our push up in the standings, maybe make a championship run as far as the Commissioner's Cup is concerned. So I think you'll take kind of like that 10 and 15 spot with the Pacers this year. You're going to look back at this 4 and 5 spot with the Fever, where they went on this run and got back up over 500, and that's when they really started to go, because they've got a good stretch of games as far as competitive games coming up. But then after that, they play some pretty light scheduling, or they have some pretty light scheduling after that. But again, some good opponents coming up. The Golden State, they have to go out for their first West Coast swing coming up here soon, and that'll be well, let's talk about that later. Keys to the game against the Connecticut Sun. Key number one, you got to control the tempo. I think there was not really any tempo the last time they played the Sun. The Sun got their way with the Fever. They were scoring at will. I mean, when you shoot over 50%, that's not much defense being played. Their defense looks a lot better now, and I think that this is a game they'll bounce back from. Some vengeance here. They will. I'm assuming they win this by at least 10. I wouldn't be shocked if it was a 15 to 20 point win for the Fever, just because I think they're going to want to get some juice back, because they got it stolen from them last time against the Sun, and they don't want to be embarrassed again. So I think it will be a really competitive game at the start, but ultimately I think the Fever are going to start to pull away probably around that second quarter, where the Fever start to get going and really knock the Sun out, because the Sun are going to come in and compete again. I mean, I know there's not a lot of players left over from the Stephanie White era, but there's still some players left over, and so they'll want to give their best punch to the Fever. I just feel like the Fever are just way too talented when they've got these players healthy they're going to be able to compete and beat the Sun pretty easily in this matchup. If they don't, that's a really disappointing loss after a very impressive win against that New York Liberty team. And then you got to go head out on the West Coast. But yeah, key number one, got to keep the pace, got to keep that tempo going, because it was lacking the last time they played Connecticut. I think another thing you got to do is get Aaliyah Boston more involved. I think, the more that they run the ball through her, it actually opens up all the other players. I mean, it unlocks Lexi Hull, it unlocks Natasha Howard, it unlocks Sophie Cunningham. I think that she does a really nice job of distributing the ball into those corners where Hull and Cunningham like to stand, even Kelsey Mitchell at times, where they like to stand and hit those shots. I think you got to continue to get that same bench production, assuming that DeWanna Bonner is back against her old team. That adds another option as far as scoring off the bench. And then you're looking at a Fever team that's actually really deep, 8 to 9 players deep, and really good players, and are playing really good basketball right now. If you've got Sydney Colson playing the way that she is, DeWanna playing the way she is, and the way Sophie always plays, Dantas as well. I mean, this team is starting to look really deep and learning how to play together. So I think, too, getting those second options going, but through Aaliyah Boston. And then number 3, I think the bench. I think the bench is going to be crucial, just because this is where I think you have a true advantage, where Connecticut is not nearly as deep. I think 6 or 7 players deep, where the Fever have much more talent, 8 through 9, than the Connecticut Sun do. And I think that's an advantage for the Fever, just because they're going to be playing on their home floor. The pace in which Indiana wants to play at, I think that will benefit them, especially with those bench options. And so I think that's key. Number 3, looking ahead to the schedule, you're going to have this game on Tuesday, June 17th, against the Connecticut Sun, 7 p.m. Eastern time on NBA TV. And then the Fever head out for their first West Coast trip of the season. It's going to be Thursday, June 19th, against the Golden State Valkyries at 10 p.m. Eastern time. First time they'll play Golden State, the new expansion team, and that is going to be on Prime Video. It's in the Chase Center, which is where the Golden State Warriors have made home. I think also Golden State Valkyries, that's their home court. And then Vegas, Sunday, June 22nd. And that's, again, at Vegas, 3 p.m. Eastern time on I keep saying NBC, ESPN, ESPN Plus, and Disney Plus, T-Mobile Arena. Then Tuesday, June 24th at Seattle, 10 p.m. Eastern time on NBA TV at Climate Pledge Arena. Storm are also looking really good this season, so that's a tough stretch. I mean, Golden State's playing pretty well for an expansion team. I think they've looked good. They've had some really good turnout for their home games. They've tailed off just a little bit, but then they brought it back up by winning 3 in a row. So it's a team that's coming in hot, and I think the Fever will have their hands full there. We will preview that game on probably Wednesday after the Fever play the Connecticut Sun. We'll recap that and then preview Golden State in that episode as well. So we will talk about the new expansion side. But those are the next 4 games. Like I said, the Commissioner Cup ends on Tuesday for the Fever as far as the group stage or whatever you want to call this, the qualifying for the final. But I think as the league grows, the Commissioner's Cup will grow. It's a fun little in-season tournament. And then the final doesn't count against your record. All the regular season ones do, like all the games leading up to the final count against your regular season record, but the final on July 1st would not. It would just be a chance to collect some hardware mid-season. But yeah, those are the next 4 games coming up on the schedule. The Fever have to get this game against Connecticut, I think, because that westward swing, you at least want to go 2-1 on that. I think a successful trip would be 2-1 on that swing, but I would not be shocked if the Fever had a hard time winning a game out there just because those are 3 really good teams. I mean, I know it would be disappointing to lose 3, but I mean, maybe you say you got to beat Golden State just because they're a newer team, but man, they play so well at times, and being on their home floor, hosting Caitlin, where again, every Caitlin Clark game is going to be high energy just because it's going to bring a lot of Caitlin Clark and Fever fans to that arena. But still, Golden State's that's going to be a tough place to play and win. Vegas is a very good team, and Seattle's a good team. So a really tough stretch for the Fever coming up. So that's why you got to win this game against Connecticut, because if you unfortunately drop 3 straight, then at least you're not too down in the barrel. If you lose against Connecticut and then you have to go out west and you lose 2 or 3 of those games, that's another tough stretch that the Fever have gone through. So looking forward to that West Coast trip. I think that's going to be a big challenge for Indiana. Usually is going west. So I think the goal will be going 2-1. But thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Again, we're over on YouTube at the Pacers Fever Show. Anywhere you can find your podcast, the Pacers Fever Show. You can like, subscribe, comment, give us 5 stars over on Spotify or Apple. It helps people find us, helps the community grow. I really appreciate the support so far. It's been a lot of fun. I know this was a little bit of a longer episode, but this was a really great win for the Indiana Fever to knock off the undefeated New York Liberty, and it should give you confidence that this team can beat anybody in this league on any given night, and that's a really exciting thing for the weeks to come, months to come, and hopefully into the postseason we can make a long run. So again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time where we will recap this game against the Connecticut Sun, and we will be previewing the Golden State Valkyries.